I wasn't supposed to be out there that long. Forest Trunk Road 101 wasn't the kind of place you volunteered for. It was the kind of job that landed in your lap when the foreman looked around the crew and said, "Who can pull nights? Who can keep the machines from getting messed with?" And when you're low man on the totem pole, you raise your hand. That's how I ended up babysitting graders and dozers in the dead middle of nowhere. Miles of gravel cutting through Alberta's deep bush. I figured it was easy money. Sit in a truck, drink coffee, maybe shoo away some kids looking to joyride. I didn't know. None of us knew. We'd been pushing a new stretch of 101, cutting further north where the trees crowd tighter and the muskeg stinks like rot. There's no cell service out there. No houses. Just endless spruce, jack pine, and black bog water you wouldn't want to fall into. Once you leave pavement, it feels like the world forgets you. Our camp was just trailers and a diesel tank, generators chugging, bunks that smelled of sweat and plywood. The kind of place where you count the days by coffee stains and the notch marks on your thermos. I'll tell you straight, at first it was just uneasy. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel like quiet. You'd shut off the dozers at night and it was like the forest leaned in. Even with bugs and owls and coyotes, there was something underneath. Something waiting. The first night it showed itself, it was a deer. I was running a patrol on the pickup, just idling down to kilometer 44 where we'd parked the graders. Headlights washed the ditch, and there it was. A doe, still warm, steam rising off its body in the cold night. But it wasn't roadkill. I've seen what trucks do to deer, broken legs, caved ribs, tire marks. This was different. This deer had been opened. The ribcage spread like somebody had grabbed and pulled. Inside's gone. No drag marks. No tracks. Just a neat circle of flattened grass around it, like something big had crouched there while it worked. The smell punched me in the gut. Copper. Rot. Meat left too long in the sun. It coated my mouth until water tasted like blood. I gagged, bent over the ditch, and the bile that came up burned all the way down. I called it in. The company man on radio didn't even blink. "Wolves," he said. But wolves don't unzip a deer like a jacket, and wolves don't take every organ and leave the hide neat as laundry. The next sign was the flags. Surveyors marked the cut line with orange tape. Every 50 meters a flutter of color, little lifelines in a sea of black trees. One night I drove the stretch from kilometer 46 to 50. Half the flags were gone. Pulled clean, not snapped, not shredded by wind, gone. The next night they were back, but wrong, knotted between saplings in perfect loops, circles swaying in the breeze, like someone wanted me to see them. I didn't touch them, didn't log them, just kept driving. The machine started getting hit next. The excavator at 47 came back with scratches down the cab. 4 deep lines, straight, even. Too perfect for brush, too wide for a bear. The smell inside the cab was worse than the deer. Rot, copper, wet fur so thick it clung to your clothes. Daryl, the day operator, swore he'd quit before he climbed back in. We scrubbed with solvent. Bleach, didn't matter. By the next morning, the smell was stronger. That's when the truckers started whispering. CB chatter on 101 is usually jokes, weather, washouts, but at night, I started catching things between the static. Breathing, wet, heavy exhales, and once, a growl so deep it rattled the dash. "Keep rolling. Don't stop," one old hauler told me when I checked in. "What do you mean?" I asked. Static hissed. Then his voice tight, like he was choosing words with a knife at his throat. "You stop out here. They pace you. Don't give them a reason." That was all. No name, no explanation, just silence after. I thought he was crazy until I saw it myself. One night around 2 a.m., I stopped at a turnout to piss. The forest was dead quiet. No crickets, no owls, just silence so thick it pressed into my ears. Halfway through, I heard a step, heavy, deliberate, branches creaking under weight. My skin went cold. I zipped, turned. My headlights caught eye shine in the ditch. 2 yellow orbs high off the ground, steady as torches. They blinked once, and then another pair lit up beside them, and another. I didn't finish. I scrambled back into the truck, locked the doors, and sat there shaking while the engine idled. The smell seeped through the vents. Copper, rot, wet fur. When I finally dared to drive, the eyes blinked out, but I knew they weren't gone. They just didn't need me to see them anymore. That was only the start. After that night with the eyes in the ditch, I started keeping the windows shut tight. Didn't matter. The stink still found its way in. Copper, rot, wet fur. It was like it clung to me after the first time. No amount of soap or toothpaste could scrub it out. Even in camp, guys started noticing it. "Smells like something crawled under the bunkhouse," McNeil said one morning, wrinkling his nose. "Dead badger or something." But when we checked, there was nothing. Nothing under the skids, nothing in the ditch, nothing in the trees, just that smell, hanging like a cloud nobody could point at. By the second week, we weren't joking about it anymore. Rosa, toughest of the lot, started parking her excavator as close to the trailer as she could at night, shotgun across her lap while she filled out the daily sheet. Theo, the kid, wasn't sleeping at all. Eyes ringed red, hands trembling when he lit his smokes. I'd sit in my truck with the radio hissing, scanning channels. Sometimes I'd get chatter from haulers, sometimes just static, and sometimes breathing. Not static, not interference. Breathing, slow, wet, heavy, like lungs that weren't human. Once I heard a voice slip through, broken, stretched, like it didn't quite know how to use words. "Don't stop." I turned the radio off and drove the rest of the shift in silence. It escalated when we found the moose. Kilometer 55, ditch line. Big bull must have weighed 1,200 pounds in life, dead, or worse. It wasn't eaten, it was arranged. Legs bent back the wrong way. Head twisted around so far the antlers gouged the dirt. Ribcage split open, organs missing, hide peeled back neat as if with a knife. And in the mud around it, prints. Not boot, not paw, something between. Long, oval pads, 5 toes too long for a wolf, ending in claws that dug deep furrows into clay. Some prints were as wide as my outstretched hand. The stride, longer than a man's, deeper than a bear's. We all stood there in silence. Nobody joked, nobody lit a cigarette. Even McNeil kept his mouth shut. "Cougars don't do this," Rosa whispered finally. "No," I said. My throat was dry. "Nothing does." That night, I swore something followed me the whole patrol. Every time I slowed, I'd catch movement in the mirrors. A shadow ducking tree to tree, keeping pace. Eyes blinking in and out of the dark like coals. When I stopped at kilometer 60, the silence hit again. No bugs, no owls, just that heavy blanket. I sat with the truck idling, hand on the rifle, heart hammering. The CB hissed and I heard it, that growl. Low, layered, like more than one throat at once. It rattled the dash. Then a voice, garbled but clear enough to freeze me. "Watching." I drove back to camp faster than I've ever driven gravel in my life. By week 3, guys were talking about quitting. Theo outright begged for transfer. McNeil started showing up drunk just to get through nights. Rosa? She stopped laughing. She'd just sit cleaning her shotgun over and over, whispering to herself. The company men called it nerves. Remote jobs mess with your head. Suck it up. But they weren't the ones finding mutilated animals in the ditches. They weren't the ones scrubbing claw marks out of steel cabs. We were. The turning point came with the pickup. Kilometer 63, abandoned F-350, hazards still blinking, doors open, radio humming. No driver, no gear, no footprints leaving the scene. But on the hood, claw marks. 4 deep rakes curling through metal like it was soft as butter. And the smell, Christ, the smell. Rotten copper so thick it gagged me, made bile rise until I bent over and puked in the gravel. When I wiped my mouth and looked up, I saw them. Eyes. 3 sets across the ditch, low at first, then higher, standing. Broad shoulders silhouetted against the tree line, snouts long, fur slick with mist. They didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The stink rolled over me, choking. When I finally forced myself back into the truck, my hands shook so bad I dropped the keys twice. The engine roared and the eyes blinked out. Gone. I reported the truck. Left out the eyes. Didn't matter. The company would have stamped it bare and told me to keep driving. I'll never forget the night I broke. Kilometer 70. Middle of nowhere. I'd pulled over to check fuel levels on a parked grader. Silence again. No frogs. No owls. Then the stink hit me. So strong it coated my teeth. Copper, rot, musk. My knees went weak. I heard claws drag across steel. Long, slow, deliberate. The grader door handle rattled once, twice, like something testing it. Then breath fogged the glass. Not mine. I ducked behind my truck door. Heart hammering, rifle in my grip. Through the side mirror I saw it. Tall, too tall. Shoulders like a man but hunched forward, head long, ears pointed back. Fur matted, dripping, eyes burning yellow in the dark. It pressed a claw against the grater glass and scraped. The sound went through my skull like knives. I don't remember driving back. I only remember slamming the bunkhouse door and sitting with my back against it until sunrise. By then, I knew. It wasn't wolves, it wasn't bears. Something else lived on Forest Road 101, and it wanted us to know it was there. I thought the first weeks were bad. Turns out, that was just the warm-up. After the abandoned pickup at kilometer 63, everything started sliding downhill. The forest didn't just watch anymore. It pressed closer, like it was tired of waiting for us to leave. The first morning back at camp, Rosa slammed her lunchbox down on the table. Door was open, she said, eyes wide and furious. We all froze. What do you mean open? McNeil asked. The trailer door. I locked it. I always lock it. This morning it was open, wide like somebody had come in, but nothing's missing. We didn't laugh. Nobody accused her of forgetting, because we'd all been finding little things too. The bunk curtain drawn back when you knew you'd shut it. Your boots shifted 6 inches from where you left them. The toilet seat up, when you live with 3 guys who always drop it down. We stopped talking about it after breakfast. But the silence between us was heavier than any words. Later that day, Daryl showed us his grater, claw marks again, deeper this time. All the way down the side panel, through the paint, curling the steel like a can opener. He swore he'd heard it in the night. Something walking circles around the cab, slow, heavy. I could feel the vibrations in the floor. Nobody argued, nobody joked, not anymore. The smell became constant. At first it came in waves like a warning. Now it hung over us day and night. Copper, rot, wet fur, so strong you could taste it in your gums. I brushed my teeth till my gums bled, but the stink never left. Coffee tasted like pennies. Bread tasted sour. Even my sweat smelled like blood and musk. It was like the forest had crawled under my skin and made a home there. By the end of week 3, Theo cracked. He'd been silent for days, eyes hollow, hands trembling. That night he wandered out past the trailers without a word. We thought he was just going to take a leak. 10 minutes passed, then 20. We started calling for him. No answer. We grabbed lights and went looking. The forest swallowed our beams. The stink was everywhere, thick as fog. We found his cigarette still burning in the mud, but no Theo. Hours later, just before dawn, he walked back into camp. No flashlight, no boots, barefoot, feet cut and bleeding. He didn't say a word, just crawled into his bunk and stared at the wall. We asked what happened. He never answered. Not then, not ever. That same week, 2 truckers vanished, hauling logs southbound, never checked in at the weigh station. RCMP wrote it off as mechanical failure or them skipping town. But the next night we found their rig. Kilometer 72. Empty, nose down in the ditch, doors open, cab splattered with something dark that wasn't engine oil, and claw marks. Everywhere, across the hood, down the side panels, through the rear trailer doors, steel bent and torn like it was paper. The smell inside was so thick we couldn't breathe. Rotten copper, layered with piss. Like whatever did it wanted us to know it had been there. We burned sage in the cab. Didn't help. When the tow crew showed up, they unhooked fast as they could and refused to talk about it. Shotguns by the biff. After that, the crew started sleeping in shifts. 2 awake, 2 trying to sleep, shotguns by the bunks, rifles across our laps when we drove patrol. The company man said it was paranoia. Bears, he insisted, but we all knew better. One night, I sat parked at kilometer 70 with the window cracked an inch. The forest was silent. No bugs, no birds, just silence so deep I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Then I heard it, pacing, something heavy moving circles around the truck, gravel crunching slow and deliberate. I held my breath. The pacing stopped, then a hand slapped the side of the cab, open palm, 5 long fingers. The metal boomed under the weight. I froze, didn't move, didn't breathe. Another slap, higher this time, right against the window. The glass rattled, breath fogged the pain, not mine. 2 yellow eyes hung inches away, glowing through the fog, blinking slow, patient, hungry. I fumbled for the ignition. Engine roared, the eyes blinked out, gone. But the stink stayed. It stayed for days. The next morning, we found more prints. Deep in the fresh gravel, circling the graders, too big for wolves, too long for a man, nails carving furrows deep as knife cuts. Some prints overlapped, dozens of them, like a pack. That was when Rosa said the word out loud, Dogman. The silence that followed was heavier than a gunshot. We'd all been thinking it, but saying it made it real. By week 4, nobody doubted anymore. The forest owned us. The road was just a scar, we cut through it. And scars heal. We weren't the ones patrolling anymore. We were the ones being herded. Every time we drove, they paced us in the trees. Every time we stopped, they circled. Every time we tried to ignore it, they reminded us with claws and stink and eyes that never blinked. That was just the beginning. I thought I was afraid before. Turns out fear still had more teeth. After Rosa said, Dogman, it was like the word opened a door. They didn't bother hiding as much after that. Maybe they wanted us to know. Maybe they'd been waiting for us to admit it. The first one to go was McNeil. He'd been cracking jokes less and drinking more. Always said he wasn't scared, just pissed. Kept muttering about how he wasn't going to let some mythical mutts push him off a paycheck. One night he went out to check fuel levels on the dozer at kilometer 67. Said he'd be back in 10 minutes. We waited, 15 passed, then 30. We grabbed rifles and flashlights. His boot prints led down the gravel, veered off into the ditch, stopped at the tree line. That's where we found his hard hat, split down the middle like someone had bent it over a knee, and beside it, prints, huge, deep, circling. The smell rolled over us, copper, rot, wet fur so thick I could taste it on my teeth. Theo doubled over and puked. Rosa swore under her breath and clutched her shotgun tighter. We called for him until our voices cracked. Nothing answered, not even echoes, just silence, heavy and final. By dawn, he hadn't come back. He never did. The company filed him as missing. RCMP searched 2 days, found nothing. Not a scrap of clothing, not a bone. Nothing but those clawed tracks that went on until the bush swallowed them. After that, nobody left camp alone. We worked in pairs, rifles slung, radios hissing. Didn't matter. The radios weren't ours anymore. One night while Rosa and I were patrolling, the speaker hissed. At first I thought it was McNeil. The voice was broken, stretched thin with static, but it sounded like him. "Help me!" Rosa grabbed the mic. "Where are you?" Static. Then breathing, slow, wet, heavy, then a growl so deep it made the dashboard shake. We shut it off and drove in silence. Didn't speak of it again. The nights blurred. I stopped sleeping. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw McNeil's hard hat split in half. Saw the prints circling it. Smelled the copper stink until bile rose in my throat. Coffee didn't help. Nicotine didn't help. I was running on adrenaline and fear. Every shadow outside the truck was a set of eyes. Every scrape of branch against metal was claws testing the cab. Then came the first time I saw one clear. Kilometer 72. Moonlight cut through the fog, silvering the gravel. I was parked, lights off, trying to catch my breath. The silence pressed in, thick as wool. Then the stink hit me, so strong it made my gums throb, copper and rot and fur. Something moved at the tree line, tall, broad, wrong. It stepped into the road like it owned it. 7 feet, maybe more. Arms too long, claws dragging the gravel. Head shaped wrong, like a wolf's, but stretched, hunched forward on a chest too broad for the legs beneath it. Eyes burning yellow in the dark. It looked at me and smiled, not with lips, with teeth. Rows of them, catching the moon. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My hands shook on the rifle. I knew it wouldn't matter. Then it stepped closer. The gravel groaned under its weight. 1 step, 2, 3. It stopped at the edge of my headlights, raised one clawed hand, dragged it slow across the hood. The sound was like nails on a coffin lid. Then it was gone, melted into the trees, but the stink stayed. It always stayed. After that, the rest of the crew believed. Even Theo, who hadn't spoken since the night he disappeared. His hands shook constantly. He'd wake up screaming, eyes wide and blind. Sometimes we found him standing at the tree line barefoot, staring into the dark like something called to him. We stopped trying to pull him back, because sometimes I felt it too, like the forest was whispering, calling, promising. Another week. Another week, another truck abandoned, this one worse. Kilometer 80. Doors ripped off, cab torn open like a tin can. Blood sprayed across the seats. No driver. And on the dash, a circle made from bones. Neat, precise, arranged like hands that knew ritual. Rosa broke then. She sat in the dirt, shotgun across her knees, sobbing. I'm not staying. I don't care about the money. I don't care what the company says. I'm done. I wanted to say the same, but my mouth was too dry, and something in me whispered, don't leave. Not yet. Like I had to see how it ended. By week 6, the pack didn't hide anymore. We'd see eyes lining the tree line. 10, 20, blinking in and out like coals, always circling, always pacing, never rushing. Not yet. Every morning we found prints, circles around the graders, claw marks down the trailers, even the generator shed, dented, clawed, stinking of rot. The company man said vandals. We said nothing, because we knew the truth. I was breaking, sleep gone, nerves shot, every taste copper, every breath stink, every shadow a monster. And I hadn't even seen the worst yet. By the time week 7 came around, none of us were the same. We weren't a crew anymore. We were prisoners on that road, circling the same kilometers, waiting for the forest to decide which one of us it would take next. Nights were the worst. The stink came earlier, rolling in with the dusk. It soaked into the gravel, into the bunkhouse walls, into our skin. I'd wash my hands until the knuckles cracked, but they still smelled like pennies and piss. We stopped eating. Bread tasted like rot, meat like copper. Even water was foul. The forest had gotten inside us, and we couldn't spit it out. The pack started showing themselves more. Not shadows, not just eyes, forms. Tall, broad, fur matted with muck, moving with a weight that bent branches like straw. I remember one night, parked at kilometer 75. Moon high, fog rolling off the muskeg. My brights caught something moving through the trees. At first I thought it was a moose. Then it stood upright. 7, 8 feet easy, shoulders hunched, claws curling, head too long, snout catching the light, eyes burned yellow. It didn't run, it just stared. And then slowly it lifted one hand, pressed claws against a spruce trunk, dragged down. Bark peeled away in ribbons, the sound carrying across the road like screams. I drove backward half a kilometer before I could turn around. The next morning the whole tree line was scarred, claw marks, dozens of them, some fresh, sap bleeding, others older, gray with rot. We realized then that this had been going on longer than we'd been there. We were just the next fools to wander in. Theo broke not long after. We woke one night to the sound of the trailer door slamming. He was gone. We grabbed rifles, flashlights, followed the prints through the mud. Bare feet. His. They led to the tree line. Stopped there, all around, the clawed prints, circling, dozens of them. We called until our throats bled. No answer, no echo, just silence. He never came back. The next week, Rosa stopped talking. She kept her shotgun across her knees, eyes hollow, lips cracked. When I tried to ask her anything, she just stared past me, like she was already half in the trees. One night, she pressed the barrel under her chin and whispered, "Not letting them take me." I pulled it from her hands before she could do it. She didn't fight me. She just sat there, trembling, eyes full of tears that never fell. I started hearing whispers in my head, not through the radio this time, inside, like thoughts that weren't mine, telling me to walk into the dark, telling me to stop fighting, telling me I was already theirs. I bit my tongue until it bled, just to feel something real. But even the blood tasted like copper and rot. Even myself wasn't mine anymore. The stink hit first. The final night of Section 1 burned itself into me. We were at kilometer 82. Rosa, me, and what was left of us. The stink hit first, so thick I gagged until my throat tore raw. Then the eyes. Not 2, not 10. Dozens. Blinking into existence across the tree line. Yellow, patient, waiting. And then they stepped out. 1, 2, 3, more. Huge, broad wolf heads, man bodies, claws dragging sparks off the gravel. Fur matted, dripping, muzzles curling back in grins full of knives. They circled the trucks. Slow, deliberate, like wolves testing a herd. One pressed its snout against my window, I could see its breath fog the glass. I could hear it sniffing. I could feel its weight when it pressed a claw down, glass creaking under the strain. Rosa screamed. I couldn't. My throat was locked. I sat frozen, watching those eyes blink in and out, watching claws scrape across steel, listening to the breath of monsters that shouldn't exist. And then, as the sky began to pale with the first hints of dawn, they melted back into the trees, one by one, eyes blinking out until the forest looked empty again. But the stink stayed. The stink always stayed. That was the night I realized something. We weren't guarding the road, we weren't even working it. We were being herded, tested, played with, and sooner or later, the pack would close in. That was only the beginning. By the time we made it to week 8 on Forest Road 101, the nights had changed. It wasn't just about hearing them or smelling them or catching their eyes in the dark anymore. Now it was about knowing they were there. Always. Everywhere. No matter how loud the machines were or how bright the floodlights burned, you could feel the weight of their presence pressing in. I stopped thinking of it as us patrolling the road. It was them patrolling us. They let us move, let us work, but only inside their circle. Step too far and you'd feel it immediately. The silence, the stink, the weight of eyes on your back. We were corralled, like cattle. The strange thing was how deliberate it felt. They didn't rush us. They didn't tear us apart in the first week or the second. They paced. They tested, they watched, like they were waiting for something, maybe for us to break on our own. It started with the machines again, only this time they weren't just scratched, they were ruined. One morning, we found the excavator at kilometer 87 crushed down on its tracks. Not tipped, not rolled, crushed. Cab caved in, steel buckled inward like a giant hand had pressed it flat. The company man blamed vandals with a cutting torch. We all laughed in his face. There weren't welders out here in the bush, and no torch leaves claw marks 4 inches deep. That night, Rosa and I pulled watch near the fuel tanks. The air stank already, copper and fur riding in on the breeze before dark even settled. We lit smokes just to cover the taste. Didn't help. Around midnight, the drums started rattling, soft at first, like a hand brushing them, then louder, rocking back and forth, liquid sloshing inside. We froze, rifles up. I swung my light. Nothing, just fog and steel. Then breath fogged the tank. Something big pressed against it from the far side, hidden just out of the beam. Claws screeched across metal, slow, deliberate, like chalk on a blackboard. Rosa's hands shook so bad the barrel clattered. Then silence. The tank stopped moving. The stink rolled over us, gagging. By the time we circled with lights, there was nothing but clawed grooves in the paint and mud full of prints. Too long, too heavy, circling. Sleep became impossible after that. Even when I collapsed on my bunk, every creak of the trailer sounded like claws. Every gust of wind rattling the siding sounded like knuckles testing the wall. I started biting the inside of my cheeks raw just to stay awake. Blood in my mouth was better than the dreams. The dreams were worse. Dreams of being surrounded, dozens of glowing eyes, breath fogging the glass. Dreams of voices whispering in the dark, calling me by name. Dreams of McNeil's voice, stretched and broken, saying, "Help me," while something laughed underneath. I woke gagging every time, mouth full of copper taste. Didn't matter if I'd bitten myself or not. The blood was always there. The truckers were next. One by one, they stopped running nights. Too many rigs abandoned on the shoulders, doors hanging open, radios hissing with voices that weren't human. Some trucks we never found. Just the trailers, pulled off the road, contents scattered, claw marks gouged into the dirt. CB chatter dropped to nothing. At first I thought my set was dead. Then I realized nobody wanted to speak, as if even words carried on the air might call the things closer. The first time they paced us in the open, I nearly lost my mind. We were driving south, Rosa and me in the cab. Fog was thick, headlights pushing maybe 20 feet. The stink was strong already, which meant they were near. I told myself to keep steady, keep the wheels straight. Then I saw them. Shapes in the fog keeping pace just beyond the ditch, tall, broad, arms swinging wrong, heads hunched forward. Every few seconds, eyes burned yellow before the mist swallowed them. There weren't just one or two, there were 6, 7, maybe more. Rosa gripped the dash hard enough her knuckles bled. "Don't stop," she whispered. I didn't plan to. But the truck felt like it was crawling, like the fog had thickened to tar. Every second was an eternity, with those shapes loping alongside. Then claws screeched down the side of the cab, a long, slow drag. The sound set my teeth on edge. I floored it, gravel spat, the shapes fell back, melting into the mist, but the stink stayed. It always stayed. That was when I realized something new. They weren't just watching. They were pushing, prodding, making sure we knew they could take us whenever they wanted. And the worst part? They wanted us to understand that. After that night with the pack pacing us in the fog, none of us doubted anymore. It wasn't stories, it wasn't paranoia, it was real, and it was deliberate. The forest didn't just hold them, it belonged to them. We were the intruders, and they made sure we felt it every single second. The next morning, we found the graders half buried. Not tipped, not rolled, buried. Something had pushed whole walls of dirt over the tracks, like giants had come in overnight and tried to smother them. And the prints were everywhere, clawed, heavy, circling, always circling. The company man came out by helicopter, walked the site with a clipboard. "Bears," he muttered. "Black bears will dig. Grizzlies too." I stared at the claw marks that were half an inch deep in solid steel. "Show me the bear that does that," I told him. He didn't answer, didn't even write it down, just checked a box and told us to keep working. That's when I stopped believing anyone was coming to help. The nights turned longer after that, not in hours, darkness doesn't care about clocks, but in wait. Every minute dragged like an hour. Every hour stretched until dawn felt impossible. We stopped cooking in the mess. The smell of food drew them closer. We could hear them outside, claws clicking, breath fogging the windows. One night we tried frying bacon. Bad mistake. The siding rattled for hours, claws screeching as they circled, until we killed the generator and sat in darkness, praying. I started noticing patterns. They never rushed us outright, never stormed the trailers. They circled, they paced, they tested, like wolves with cattle waiting to see which one limped. And we all had our limp. Rosa's was despair, Theo's was silence, mine was fear, raw, unending, corroding everything. I felt them feeding on it, the way their eyes burned brighter when my breath quickened. They wanted us to break ourselves, and we were. The whispers came next, not just in the radio, but in the dark. When I lay in my bunk, I could hear them under the generator hum. Not words at first, breathing, wet, heavy. Then words, stretched, broken, like something trying on human speech for the first time. Come, out, walk with us. Sometimes it used my name. Hearing it spoken in that voice nearly drove me mad. I shoved rags in my ears, didn't help. The words weren't in the air. They were in my head. One night, Rosa shook me awake. Her eyes were wide, face pale. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. At first I thought it was wind. Then I realized it was chanting. Low, guttural, dozens of voices rising and falling in rhythm. We pressed our ears to the trailer wall. The sound came from the trees, circling us. Not wolves, not men, Something between, layering their voices until it felt like the forest itself was alive and mocking us. We stayed awake until dawn. The chanting stopped with the first light, but I still hear it in my skull, even now. By week 9, more of the crew were gone. Theo wandered into the trees one night and didn't come back. No prints, no scream, just gone. Rosa said he'd been called, that the whispers finally pulled him too far. I wanted to deny it, but I'd felt it too. Standing at the tree line with the stink thick around me, the eyes watching, I'd felt my feet wanting to step forward. One step, then another. Like gravity pulling me into their world, like my will wasn't my own anymore. I only stopped because Rosa grabbed my shoulder and shook me hard enough to snap it. Her eyes were wild. "Don't listen," she hissed. But her hands were trembling. Her lips mouthed words I couldn't hear, like she was fighting whispers of her own. The worst night of Section 2's beginning was kilometer 90. Fog rolled in thick, headlights bouncing useless. We were convoying 2 trucks, keeping close, radios on low. That's when the stink hit, stronger than ever. Rot, copper, wet fur. My stomach lurched. Then eyes lit the tree line. Dozens, too many to count. Yellow, burning, blinking in and out of the mist. Shapes loped alongside us, tall and wrong, keeping pace with the trucks. Every time one leaned closer, claws scraped sparks off gravel. One slammed a hand against Rosa's cab, leaving a dent the size of a frying pan. I floored it. Gravel spat, engine roared. The shapes kept up. Muskeg water splashed as they darted in and out. For a full kilometer they paced us, pressing closer, closer, until the trees opened and the road widened. Then, as if on cue, they peeled away, melted into the fog. Gone. We stopped at dawn to check the trucks. Both were shredded. Panels clawed, glass fogged with handprints too big for any man. And the stink was baked into the steel itself. No washing would get it out. That's when I knew something. Something worse than fear, worse than death. They weren't just hunting us. They were hurting us, pushing us mile by mile, deeper into their woods, deeper into their circle. And the longer we stayed, the closer the circle closed. After kilometer 90, camp was never the same. We'd seen them in numbers, not shadows, not whispers, a pack. And once you see them together, you stop pretending there's any hope of fighting back. We weren't workers anymore. We weren't a crew. We were bait that hadn't been bitten yet. The generators started failing next. At first we thought it was bad fuel. One night the lights flickered, dimmed, and the engine coughed until it died. We scrambled outside with jerry cans and tools, hands shaking. That's when I saw it. Claw marks gouged into the side of the generator shed. Not random. Deep rakes that spelled a circle, scratched slow and deliberate, like a warning or a signature. We managed to get the backup running, but it only lasted 3 nights. Every time one died, the stink rolled in heavier, like they were waiting for the dark. The first night we lost power completely was the worst. Lights snapped out at 2 a.m., plunging the trailers into pitch. No hum of the generator, no fan, no fridge, no sound but our own breath. And then the scratching started. At first soft, like nails against plywood, then harder. Metal screeching, siding rattling, windows trembling. Something slammed against the wall hard enough to knock dishes from the shelf. Rosa screamed. I held my rifle but didn't move, didn't breathe. Claws dragged across the door, slow and deliberate. The handle rattled, once, twice, like something testing it. Then breath fogged the window, heavy, wet. I could hear the sniffing, deep and steady. The glass quivered as if a snout pressed against it. We sat frozen in the dark, counting each scrape, each rattle, each boom against the trailer. Hours passed like that. I bit my tongue until it bled, just to keep from screaming. The copper taste filled my mouth until I gagged. When the sun rose and light filtered through the blinds, the scratching stopped. The stink faded, but outside, the ground was a maze of prints, circling, always circling. That became the pattern. Every night, more bold. Every morning, more prints. Every day, we were weaker. Food spoiled without the generators. We ate dry crackers, warm water, the little we could scavenge. Nobody complained. Nobody had the strength. The hunger in our stomachs was nothing compared to the hunger in the woods. Then came the carcasses, warnings, gifts. I don't know what to call them. First it was a wolf, laid on the trailer steps, ribs cracked open, insides gone, circle of flagging tape tied around its neck. Next night it was a black bear cub, skinned, laid belly up beside the generator shed, prints circling it like a ritual. After that they stopped pretending. One morning we found a cow moose, head twisted backward, legs bent like broken sticks, dumped in the middle of the road, blocking us, daring us. We cut it apart with chainsaws just to move it. The stink clung to the blades for days. By week 10, I was a ghost of myself. Eyes sunken, hands trembling, stomach twisted into knots, sleep gone, food tasteless, every breath a fight. But worse than me was Rosa. She'd stopped talking altogether. Her shotgun was always across her knees. She stared out the window with eyes hollow, lips cracked from whispering words I couldn't hear. Sometimes I saw her mouth forming, "Not yet, not yet." Like she was bargaining with something I couldn't see. The second time the trailer was attacked, I thought it was the end. No warning this time. No power failure. Just a slam that rattled the whole frame. Claws tearing at the siding, claws raking the roof, claws hammering the door. The whole trailer rocked under their weight. We screamed. We fired through the walls blindly. The boom stopped. Then silence. But the stink was worse. So thick we couldn't breathe. It coated our throats, made our eyes water, made our stomachs churn. We gagged and puked until our guts emptied. The bile steamed on the floor. Then the laughter started. Not human, not animal, something in between, layered, mocking, rolling around us in the dark like the forest itself was laughing at us. I clutched my ears, praying for it to stop. It didn't. Not until dawn cracked gray over the tree line. That morning, the door was gouged. Deep ruts in the steel, curled like ribbons peeled from a can. Prints in the mud, hundreds of them, circling, always circling. Rosa just sat in her chair, rocking slow, shotgun limp in her hands. She didn't even blink when I showed her the door. Didn't even blink when I told her we'd all die here. Her lips just moved. Not yet, not yet. I was breaking. I was breaking. My mind wasn't mine anymore. Every sound was claws. Every smell was rot. Every shadow was a snout pressed against glass. I started writing this journal just to keep track of what was real and what wasn't. But the lines blur more every day. And through it all, the truth gnawed at me. We weren't being hunted. Not yet. We were being stalked, herded, toyed with. And sooner or later, the game would end. By week 11, the line between night and day stopped existing. Even when the sun rose, the forest felt darker. Shadows lingered where they shouldn't. The stink never left, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten or slept without gagging. There were 4 of us left by then. Me, Rosa, Kyle, and Jensen. Kyle was the youngest after Theo vanished. He'd only been with the crew 2 months. Cocky at first, always cracking jokes, but the road drained it out of him fast. His skin hung loose, his hands shook, his eyes darted like a cornered animal. Jensen was older, old enough to know better, but stubborn enough to stay. He He carried a rifle at all times, cleaned it twice a day like it was prayer. He said nothing scared him, but I heard him at night, muttering in his sleep, begging. The forest tested us every night. Sometimes it was pacing, sometimes it was scratching, sometimes it was whispers through the radio, voices stretched thin calling our names, but we always knew they were there. Even when we couldn't see them, we could feel them, pressing in. The night we lost Kyle started like any other. Fog thick, air heavy with rot. We were huddled in the trailer, generator dead again, shotgun shells on the table. The scratching started early. Roof rattling, siding denting. Something slammed the door until hinges groaned. We fired through the walls, deafening blasts that lit the dark for seconds at a time. Every time we heard claws scatter, then laughter rolling through the trees. By midnight it stopped. Silence, heavy, absolute silence. We didn't trust it. We sat with guns in our laps, eyes bloodshot, bodies trembling. Then Kyle stood. "I can't take this," he whispered. His voice cracked, eyes glassy. "They want me, not you, just me. If I go, they'll stop." Rosa grabbed his arm. Her lips cracked as she whispered, "Not yet, not yet." But he shook her off, walked to the door, opened it, stepped into the dark. We screamed, we begged, but he didn't look back. The stink rolled in so thick it gagged me, eyes watering, throat burning. Then we heard it, a scream, Kyle's scream, high, sharp, raw, cut off mid-breath. Silence, then laughter, dozens of throats, mocking, layered, hungry. We didn't open the door again until dawn. Outside, the prints were everywhere, circling the trailer, claw marks down the siding, across the roof, and in the ditch, Kyle's hard hat, split down the middle. Blood sprayed across the gravel in a perfect circle. We never saw him again. After that, Jensen stopped pretending he wasn't afraid. He carried his rifle everywhere, but his eyes were wild, darting. He jumped at every sound, every creak, every whisper. One night he shoved the barrel under his chin. I slapped it away before he could pull the trigger. His eyes filled with tears, but he didn't fight me. He just whispered, "Better my way than theirs." I didn't disagree, not anymore. Rosa was breaking too. Her whispers grew louder. Not words I could understand, just murmurs, half prayer, half bargain. Sometimes I swore I heard her answering voices I couldn't hear. Sometimes I caught her standing at the tree line, shotgun limp in her hands, lips moving to something in the dark. When I pulled her back, her eyes were hollow. "Not yet," she said. Always those words. Not yet. The stalking changed in week 12. They didn't just circle us anymore. They showed themselves. Closer. Clearer. We were parked at kilometer 95, floodlights strung along the graders, rifles ready. The stink rolled in heavy. Then the eyes appeared. Dozens. Yellow, burning, blinking in and out. And then they stepped out, not one, not two, but 8, 9, tall, broad, snouts long, teeth flashing in the floodlights, fur dripping with muskeg water, claws dragging sparks off steel. They didn't rush us. They didn't need to. They paced slow, circling, eyes locked on us. Every time one passed the light, I saw muscles ripple under its pelt, teeth bared in a grin that wasn't human. We fired. Rounds cracked through the night, bullets hit, I know they did. Blood sprayed, dark and hot, steaming in the cold air. One staggered, growled deep, but none of them fell, none of them stopped. They just laughed. Laughed. Like wolves, like men, like something in between, mocking us for thinking steel and powder mattered. We fired until the clips ran dry. When the smoke cleared, they were gone, melted back into the trees, but the stink stayed. It always stayed. That was the night I started seeing things. Hallucinations, maybe, or maybe not. I don't know anymore. I saw McNeil outside the window, his eyes hollow, skin gray, lips torn back. He whispered my name, then laughter rolled behind him and his face twisted, jaws snapping too wide for a man. Then he was gone. I saw Theo too, barefoot, eyes glassy, mouth whispering. He held his hand out like he wanted me to join him. When I blinked, he melted into the trees. I don't know what's real anymore, but maybe that's the point. Maybe that's what they want. The stalking never stopped, not at night, not during the day. Even when the sun rose, we saw prints circling the camp, claw marks down the graders, generator sheds dented and shredded, trailer doors rattled until hinges squealed. They wanted us tired, they wanted us weak, they wanted us broken before they closed in. And we were breaking. By the time week 13 came, there were only 3 of us left. Me, Rosa Jensen? We weren't a crew anymore. We were survivors waiting our turn. Jensen broke first. He'd been holding on with stubbornness and bullets, but stubbornness doesn't mean anything when the dark breathes against your walls. That night, the scratching started before sunset. Claws on steel, snouts huffing against the siding, the stink seeping through the cracks so thick we gagged. Jensen loaded his rifle, hands shaking. "They want me," he whispered. "Always wanted me. If I give them me, they'll leave you." I grabbed his arm. "Don't." But his eyes were wild, bloodshot. "They laugh when I sleep. They laugh when I wake. They're not stopping until I go." He wrenched free and threw the door open. The stink poured in like a wave. He raised his rifle, fired into the trees. A roar answered, not animal, not human, both, layered and wet. Then they came. Eyes, dozens of them flaring yellow in the tree line. Shapes hunched and massive, pouring out of the fog. Jensen screamed and fired again. Then claws hit him. The sound was wet, final. We slammed the door, shoved the table against it, sat with our backs pressed tight while the walls shook under weight. Claws raked, siding dented, glass cracked. The trailer rocked like a toy in a child's hands. Rosa sobbed. I held my rifle but didn't fire. What was the point? We listened to Jensen scream until his voice snapped. Then silence, then laughter, rolling, layered, circling us. The siege lasted hours. Breath fogged the glass. Claws scraped the roof. Hands rattled the handles until the steel bent. The smell coated every surface, thick and choking. I gagged until bile rose, until my stomach was empty, and still I dry heaved. At one point, something climbed the roof. Heavy, slow. The beams creaked, dust sifting down. Then claws dragged the full length, curling steel like paper. The sound split my skull until I wanted to claw my own ears out. Rosa pressed the barrel of her shotgun under her chin again. I tore it from her. We wrestled, teeth bared, sobbing. Finally she slumped against me, whispering, "Not yet, not yet." Always those words. When dawn finally bled gray through the blinds, the scratching stopped, the breath faded, the stink thinned, but never left. We staggered outside, legs trembling, eyes red. The trailer was shredded, siding curled back, roof torn open in places, mud a mess of prints, hundreds of them circling, always circling. Jensen's rifle lay in the ditch, bent, snapped like a twig. Of him there was nothing but blood and claw marks. After that, Rosa and I didn't bother pretending anymore. We didn't cook, we didn't work, we didn't log anything. We just sat in the wrecked trailer with our guns, waiting for nightfall, waiting for the scratching to start again. I wrote in this journal to remind myself time was still passing, but the days all blur. The stink never leaves. The whispers never stop. Sometimes I can't tell if I'm awake or dreaming. Sometimes I hear McNeil. Sometimes I hear Theo. Sometimes I hear Jensen begging me to come join him in the trees. And maybe I will. Maybe that's how this ends. The last night of Section 2 was the worst yet. The generator had died 2 days earlier. No lights, no hum, only silence and our own shallow breathing. The scratching started early. Not one set of claws, dozens. Walls, roof, door. The whole trailer shook. We shoved the table against the door, sat with our backs pressed, guns limp in our laps. Then came the voices. Dozens of them, layered, chanting. Not words I knew, not human, not animal. Something older, something wrong. The sound seeped into my skull until my thoughts weren't mine anymore. Rosa screamed and covered her ears. I pressed rags in mine, bit my tongue until it bled, but it didn't matter. The voices were inside. Then something slammed the window, glass spiderwebbed, claws curling through. A snout pressed in, eyes burning, teeth flashing inches away. I raised my rifle, pulled the trigger. The roar that followed split the night, shook the walls, rattled my teeth. Dozens more roars answered. They were all around us. Claws hammering, walls cracking, roof tearing, the stink suffocating, the laughter deafening. We huddled together on the floor, Rosa sobbing, me clutching her and the journal, whispering prayers I didn't believe. The night stretched forever. I thought it would end with teeth in my throat. But then dawn broke. Gray light seeped in, the scratching stopped, the voices faded, the stink thinned but never left. When we crawled outside, the trailer was nearly in ruins. Claw marks everywhere, roof caved, steel bent, prints circling, always circling. And Jensen's blood still fresh in the ditch. That was when I knew dawn wasn't saving us. It was just delaying them. They weren't hunting yet, they were still playing, still stalking. And when they decided the game was over, no light would stop them. That was the end of Section 2, the end of stalking. The next step would be worse.